a reading of articles and features from USA Today for Tuesday, June 9th. Your reader for this hour is Patty Young. Israel and Iran pause strikes. Tehran adds a warning after two sides trade fire. Iran announced a suspension of military operations against Israel after the two countries traded strikes for the first time since April, threatening a fragile ceasefire and negotiations to end the months-long war. The Unified Command of Iran's armed forces announced the halt in fighting June 8th, but warned of far more severe and crushing measures if Israel does not end its military campaign against Hezbollah in Lebanon. Israel agreed to stop its attacks on Iran, Reuters and Channel 12 reported, but strikes on southern Lebanon continued. Iranian media reported explosions in Tehran on June 8th and said air defenses shot down a drone over the capital. There were no immediate reports of casualties or major damage. Iran's announcement came after President Donald Trump demanded both sides immediately stop shooting. In a statement on social media later, Trump said that both countries wanted a ceasefire and that negotiations toward a peace agreement were proceeding, subject to ignorance or stupidity getting in its way. Iranian President Masoud Pezeshkian said June 8th that his country has abandoned neither the battlefield nor the negotiating table. Our priority is national security and the peace of our people. We will firmly defend the rights of the nation and will not back down in the face of any threat, he posted on X. Iranian infrastructure struck. The Israeli military said June 8th that it struck targets in western and central Iran after the Islamic Revolutionary Guards targeted an airbase in northern Israel. Among the Israeli targets were several infrastructure sites at the petrochemical complex Amashar in southwestern Iran, the military said in a post on X. These facilities were used by the armed forces of the Iranian terror regime to produce and export raw materials for weapons production, the military said. The targeted infrastructure produced unique materials that serve as critical components for the development of ballistic missiles. Tensions high since ceasefire. Iran had not targeted Israel directly since the United States and Iran agreed to the fragile ceasefire on April 7th, though Hezbollah has continued attacks. Tensions have remained high since the ceasefire, and the two sides have launched attacks on each other multiple times in recent weeks. Iran's military action followed Israeli strikes on the Lebanese capital Beirut, which Trump said he was not happy about in an interview June 7th with Fox News. Iran's response, he added, was certainly not going to help negotiations. We're very close. I would say an agreement would be signed on Monday, Tuesday, or Wednesday of this coming week. And now this takes place, the president said. You've shot your missiles. That's enough. Get back to the table and make a deal. Promises of retaliation. Abraham Raisi, a lawmaker who serves as spokesman for the Iranian Parliament's National Security Committee, posted on X that Iran would deliver a decisive and painful response to Israel's strikes on Lebanon June 7th. The IRGC said its attacks on Israel were a warning of a broader response that would encompass all U.S. and Israeli targets in the region if aggressions are repeated. The IRGC also said the Israeli military must halt attacks on Lebanon and warned that if Israel retaliates, it will face more crushing and regretful blows. We had previously warned that if the crimes in the Dalia region of Beirut expand, we will attack targets in the occupied territories, the IRGC's top joint military command said. Trump, I call the shots. Trump and Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu have clashed in recent days over Israel's military campaign in Lebanon and the risk it poses to Washington's talks with Tehran. After Iran launched strikes at Israel over the weekend, Trump told the Financial Times that Netanyahu would not escalate the situation with more strikes. Netanyahu won't have any choice, Trump told the outlet. I call the shots. I call all the shots. He doesn't call the shots. The president added that Iran's strikes on Israel are not going to have any impact on the deal, according to the British newspaper. We'll see how it ends up, but they were attacks that did not kick at all. It's one of those things that's been going on 3,000 years or 47 years, depending on how you count, he said. Ignorance or stupidity. According to Reuters, Trump and Netanyahu spoke over the phone before the president posted on social media June 8th that Iran and Israel were seeking an immediate ceasefire. Final negotiations on peace are proceeding, subject to ignorance or stupidity getting in its way, Trump wrote on social media. The blockade will remain in place and in full force and effect until a final deal is reached, he added, referring to the U.S. blockage of Iran's ports in the Strait of Hormuz. Tehran has continued to block shipping through the key waterway, which carried a fifth of the world's crude oil and liquefied natural gas before the war. Trump has said any peace deal must prevent Iran from ever developing a nuclear weapon. Iran's demands include the lifting of international sanctions, the release of billions of dollars in frozen assets, and recognition of its sway over the strait. Pakistan. Peace is within reach. Pakistani Prime Minister Shehbaz Sharif said June 8th that the final objective for negotiations is within reach and urged all sides to exercise restraint. The recent surge in violence in the Middle East is a stark reminder of the dangers associated with a tenuous ceasefire and the unbearable consequences it may lead to, Sharif posted on X. As we work earnestly and painstakingly together with our brothers and partners to find a peaceful diplomatic solution to the conflict, and especially when the final objective is just about to be achieved, we sincerely urge all sides to exercise restraint and give peace a little more chance. Meanwhile, the U.S. Ambassador to Lebanon, Mikhail Issa, said June 8th that Lebanese-Israeli negotiations were scheduled to resume in Washington. President walks off NBC's Meet the Press. Trump is challenged over claims of rigged elections. President Donald Trump abruptly ended contentious and rainy interview with NBC's Meet the Press after he was challenged for saying without evidence that California's elections are rigged. Trump also defended a controversial $1.8 billion anti-weaponization fund despite his administration publicly abandoning the plan. And he warned that the United States will remove Iran's highly enriched uranium militarily very harshly if its leaders don't agree to dispose of the material in the ongoing war. Here are top takeaways from Trump's interview with Meet the Press host Kristen Welker, which aired June 7th. Trump walks out of interview. Trump cut the interview short after the topic turned to California's slow counting of ballots in last week's primary elections, which has delayed final results in the state's governor race and Los Angeles mayoral election, among other contests. Trump said the elections are rigged by Democrats and accused California election officials of being crooked, echoing the same baseless allegations he's made about his 2020 presidential election loss. California election officials still are counting mail-in ballots, which skew more toward Democrats than votes cast on Election Day. As a result, Democratic candidates have improved their vote tallies as the mail-in ballots are counted. You play right into their hands with this stuff. You know that these elections are rigged, Trump told Welker, calling the United States a third world country when it comes to elections. Your elections are crooked, and you're crooked, and Meet the Press is crooked, Trump continued. You're a one-sided, crooked network. Sorry, let's call it quits because I've had enough. Thank you, darling. Have a good time. Trump removed the microphone attached to his suit jacket. Mr. President, please. I traveled all the way to Wisconsin, Welker said. I sat in the rain with you for an hour, Trump replied before getting out of his chair. Loud rain creates delays throughout the interview. Rain could be heard loudly hitting the metal roof of the building where Welker and Trump sat down, a disturbance that seemed to annoy the president. The interview took place Friday, June 5th, inside a barn at Chippewa Falls, Wisconsin. Trump was visiting the city and holding a roundtable discussion with farmers. Trump remarked on the rain multiple times. "Is that wind or what?" Trump said at one point when the rain became particularly loud. "What is that?" Welker, during another moment, said, "As we're having this conversation, we can hear a lot of rain." "No, a lot of rain," Trump interjected. "I'd pay them." Trump still supports anti-weaponization fund. Following bipartisan pushback, the Trump administration retreated from plans to set up a $1.8 billion anti-weaponization fund that could have provided payments to individuals who alleged they had been unfairly treated by prior administrations. Yet, Trump made clear in the interview with Meet the Press that he still supports the idea and would not rule out taxpayer dollars going to individuals who assaulted police officers during the January 6, 2021 attack on the U.S. Capitol. When asked directly if those who attacked police would be eligible for payments, Trump said, "I wouldn't be inclined to say so, but I have to see it," adding that a panel would make the decisions on a case-by-case basis. People have been hurt so badly by radical left lunatics that worked for the Biden administration and Sleepy Joe. They're vicious, they're violent. What they did to people, Trump said. And of course they went after me more than anybody else. "If it was up to me, I'd pay them the kind of money that they deserve," the president added. People have been destroyed. Lives have been destroyed. Trump's anti-weaponization fund was widely panned by Democrats and raised alarm among some Republicans over the potential for money to go to January 6 rioters who assaulted police officers. Acting Attorney General Todd Blanche told members of Congress on June 2nd the Justice Department is not moving forward with the fund, period. Trump, however, hasn't changed his opinion. "Personally, I think the weaponization fund is a great idea, and so do many other Republicans," Trump said. "You have to get it approved. If they get it approved, that's great. If they don't get it approved, I'd be disappointed." Trump says U.S. will remove uranium with or without a deal. Trump said the United States would work with Iran to retrieve its highly enriched uranium if he secures a deal to end the war in Iran. Or else, he warned, America would use military force to remove the material. "If we make a deal now, we're friendly. We'll all go together. It'll be our equipment. We'll take it out and destroy it, whether it's on site or whether we take it off site," the president said. "If we don't make a deal, then we're going to take it out militarily very harshly," Trump said, referring to enriched uranium that can be used to build a nuclear weapon. Iran's nuclear program and possession of uranium remain sticking points in U.S. negotiations with Iran. Trump has repeatedly teased he's close to a deal, but an agreement has failed to materialize. Iran has publicly said its rights to uranium enrichment are not negotiable in talks. Trump said he would renew attacks on Iran if he didn't think negotiations were progressing, but said he's satisfied with the talks. "My red line would be if I think I wasn't going to make a deal, or if I wasn't going to make a deal fast enough," Trump said when asked what would make him restart military action. "We're having very good negotiations with the people that are leading the country now." Suspect in custody after Penn Station stabbings. Security tightened after multiple people are hurt. Multiple people were injured and a suspect was in custody after stabbings were reported at Penn Station in New York City, authorities and fire officials said. At about 7 p.m. local time June 7th, fire crews and emergency medical services received a 911 call reporting that someone stabbed multiple people at Penn Station, the New York City Fire Department told USA Today. The fire department found one person with a serious injury, 2 with moderate injuries, and 3 with minor injuries. 5 people were taken to Bellevue Hospital, and 1 was taken to Cornell Hospital, the fire department said in a statement. The suspect was arrested, the fire department said. The agency did not provide further details on the attack. The New York Police Department confirmed to USA Today that the attack was under the jurisdiction of the Amtrak Police Department. Citing Amtrak Police, the NYPD said Amtrak police officers responded to multiple individuals slashed inside of Penn Station. At the time, officers found 5 people with slash wounds about the body, according to the NYPD. Emergency medical services took the victims to the hospital in stable condition. A person of interest was taken into custody and a knife was recovered at the scene, the NYPD said. Earlier this afternoon, Amtrak police responded to a reported stabbing at New York Penn Station. The suspect has been apprehended and an investigation is underway, an Amtrak spokesperson said in a statement to USA Today. The stabbings occurred at one of the busiest transit hubs and passenger rail stations in the United States. It handles hundreds of thousands of passengers a day. The attack came the day before President Donald Trump and New York City Mayor Zohran Mamdani planned to attend Game 3 of the NBA Finals at Madison Square Garden, which is directly on top of Penn Station. Authorities have increased security in the area and tightened protocols at the arena. The arena already was busy June 7th as Secret Service officers, local police, and stadium security teams prepared for Trump's arrival June 8th. The Secret Service had announced streets in the area would be closed, and the NYPD announced no watch parties for Game 3 would be held outside the arena. You are listening to a reading of today's issue of USA Today on the Niagara Frontier Radio Reading Service. The time is 15 minutes after the hour. Cities and states pushing back amid expansion of data centers. They're loud, costly, and wasteful, something you wouldn't want in your neighborhood, according to critics. But these high-tech centers are the future, supporters say. And caught in between, state and local governments across the nation are trying to figure out what to do about data centers, the huge facilities that house the physical infrastructure that powers digital services like artificial intelligence. The resource-intensive structures are spreading across the nation, with more than 4,300 data centers already constructed, according to industry database Data Center Map. In Texas, the sheer volume of new proposed data centers has led to tougher requirements for centers seeking to connect to the electric grid. And at least one startup is experimenting with the idea of putting mini data centers directly outside homes and businesses. And they're wildly unpopular among many Americans. Gallup survey results released in May found 70% of Americans oppose the construction of data centers in their communities, with more than half expressing strong opposition. Common concerns include massive energy and water consumption, electronic waste, and noise pollution. Some municipalities have responded to these concerns by passing moratoriums that keep data centers out of their community. Among them is Monterey Park, California, which is believed to be the first city to implement a permanent ban through a ballot initiative. Voters there approved the ban June 2nd. But statewide bans have proved more elusive. Lawmakers in several states have proposed setting stricter rules for data centers. Supporters say the facilities are necessary for the industry to grow, provide high-paying jobs, and boost local economies. Among them, the Digital Power Network, which bills itself as a national coalition spearheading policy advocacy for the Bitcoin ecosystem. The group has argued against moratoriums, saying that changes catalyzed by data center demand would benefit all energy consumers. At least 38 states offer tax incentives intended to attract more data centers. The National Conference of State Legislatures reported in April. We are all more and more consuming technology and data, and these data centers are going to get built, Michigan Governor Gretchen Whitmer said June 2nd, one day after she attended the groundbreaking for a $16 billion hyperscale data center campus. So my thought is, if we can hold them to a high standard and do it in Michigan, that's the best way to do it, not watch them go everywhere else and do it in a really bad way. Some states are expanding these subsidies while others are scaling them back. Meanwhile, thousands of reports about concerns over AI data centers have poured into a website created by environmental activist Erin Brockovich. Brockovich has called for more light to be shed on how these facilities are developed. Efforts to ban data centers. Lawmakers in at least 14 states have introduced legislation to temporarily halt the construction of new data centers as these concerns mount, according to the National Conference of State Legislatures. More than half of those bills have failed to advance. Maine appeared poised to become the first state to impose such a ban until Governor Janet Mills vetoed the bill in April. New York moved closer to becoming the first when legislators on June 4th passed a bill that would ban data center construction for 1 year. Similar legislation remains pending in Georgia, Michigan, Pennsylvania, South Carolina, and Vermont, according to the National Conference of State Legislatures. In Ohio, a grassroots group is collecting signatures for a constitutional amendment that would ban large data centers, although advocates face a long road to the ballot. The campaign comes after Governor Mike DeWine passed a controversial tax break for data centers that cost nearly $1.6 billion in 2025. Samuel Menges, 12, was among those who spoke out against the facilities in the Ohio State House on June 1st, reported the Columbus Dispatch, part of the USA Today network. Data centers might not seem a problem now, especially to the companies that want to build them. But what happens 50 years from now when the natural waterways have dried up? Millions of acres of farmland have been destroyed, and the communities have health problems from contaminated water or from other unforeseen problems, he said. Some lawmakers push for a balanced approach. Many states have enacted or introduced legislation that doesn't halt the construction of new data centers, but imposes regulations in hopes of protecting nearby communities from rising utility costs and mitigating adverse environmental impacts. A study from the University of Michigan found the construction of data centers raises utility rates for nearby residents and small businesses. Large data centers can consume up to 5 million gallons of water per day, equivalent to the water used by a town that's home to between 10,000 and 50,000 people, according to the Environmental and Energy Study Institute. Humming cooling systems, rumbling diesel generators, and whirring fans can be heard continuously hundreds of feet around them, according to the Environmental and Energy Study Institute, prompting reports from residents of headaches, vertigo, nausea, sleep disturbances, ear pain, and hypertension. Lawmakers in 27 states are considering legislation that would require large load customers like data centers to bear the cost of new energy infrastructure needed to support them, according to an April report from Multistate. Many others are advancing legislation that would require data centers to report how much water they use, the organization reported. Florida Governor Ron DeSantis signed a bill May 7th that imposes detailed requirements for the construction and operation of data centers, focusing on electricity and water usage. So this makes sure that local governments are ultimately in control about how their communities are developing vis-a-vis these hyperscale data centers, DeSantis said. It also includes strict definitions of large-scale data centers so that costs are not permitted to be passed on to consumers. Meanwhile, in North Carolina, lawmakers appear to be fast-tracking a bill that would set stricter rules for data centers, including requiring an assessment of the noise impact within 500 feet of the site. Data centers would also have to employ closed-loop cooling systems to minimize water consumption. The proposal would also prohibit local governments from offering economic development incentives for the projects and require that data center contracts with public utilities include provisions that prevent consumers from subsidizing the cost of their energy needs. We really tried to make a balanced approach because the data centers are in every part of our lives, Representative Matthew Winslow said, according to WRAL-TV. This is not restricting data centers from here in North Carolina, but to have a balanced approach that doesn't affect our critical infrastructure, our water, and our electricity. Americans love trains, except actually riding them. Why? Americans are cuckoo about choo-choos. There are dozens of train museums around the country. There are hundreds of model train clubs. From Murder on the Orient Express to Bullet Train to Snowpiercer, pop culture is full of stories about locomotives. It seems we love everything about trains except actually using them for transportation. I thought about this a lot during recent trips to and from Miami on Brightline trains. Brightline is a private company that offers high-speed rail service between Orlando and Miami, with a few stations along the route. My departure-return station was in West Palm Beach. The company also has been pursuing plans to offer service between major cities in Texas and California. Gasoline prices being what they are, and the cost of everything, cars and car insurance included, going up, you might expect people to be clamoring for alternative ways to get from point A to point B. Brightline train isn't moving fast enough to outrun critics. Yet, if you see a lot of the media coverage about Brightline, particularly in my home state of Florida, you might get the impression that the trains are transporting the Ebola virus, not passengers who have discovered an antidote for road rage. Brightline is a boondoggle. The trains kill people, and when they aren't killing people, they're making too much noise trying to warn people of their approach. It's true that a substantial amount of public money, roughly $500 million from cities along the route, has been invested in Brightline's tracks, stations, and crossing improvements. That might seem like a lot for the government to be spending to benefit a private enterprise, until you compare it with the gobs of money the government uses to subsidize other forms of private transportation. The Federal Highway Administration's proposed budget for the 2026 fiscal year was $72.6 billion, almost all of it for highway construction or repairs. The Federal Aviation Administration's budget request was $27 billion. The Federal Railroad Administration's budget was only $16.4 billion. No one bats an eye when government officials make plans to spend billions on roads or airport improvements, yet for some reason, investments in our rail network are taboo. If Brightline's critics in Florida were really concerned about the amount of public money that was spent to get the system operational, they should be rooting for the company to succeed so those funds won't be wasted. Instead, many seem to be hoping for Brightline to fail so they can say, "I told you so." It's also true that about 200 people have died in pedestrian or vehicle collisions with Brightline trains since the service began operating in South Florida in 2017. No one should try to minimize those deaths, although many of them were thought to be suicides or tragic accidents involving people caught on the wrong sides of safety crossing gates. Yet people die in car accidents across the country every day. In Florida, crashes involving Brightline trains always are big news. Fatal car accidents on nearby stretches of Interstate 95 or the Florida Turnpike are barely mentioned, if at all. The public has come to view traffic fatalities as just part of modern life, while deaths by train are somehow much more catastrophic. My recent trips on Brightline felt comfortable and secure. The clean and brightly lit stations are equipped with cameras and metal detectors. As a guard at a checkpoint examined my keychain to make sure it didn't contain a small knife, I thought that the fears of hoodlums using the trains to get around as they did in A Clockwork Orange and The Warriors seemed laughably far-fetched. My friends and I were seated at tables with plenty of room to work or relax. Food and drink were only an app or order away. It's hard to put a price on whizzing past traffic jams. If you've never been stuck in South Florida traffic, you might not be able to fully appreciate how empowering it feels to whisk right through it. It's hard to put a price on that. My round-trip cost, including train tickets and parking, was about $50. Obviously, that would be too much for a commuter to pay every day. But Brightline wasn't set up for that purpose. Miami has a different train system, Tri-Rail, for moving people from place to place within the metropolitan area. Brightline's primary market is business and leisure travelers who want to visit cities that are a little too far away to easily reach by car, but too close for airplane trips. Brightline has made its share of mistakes, but the company often has been its own worst enemy. It hasn't done a good job of telling its story to the public, often coming across as cryptic and defensive at times when candor is needed. Among the company's most callously boneheaded practices has been referring to people killed or injured on the tracks as trespassers. But as the saying goes, just because company officials are paranoid doesn't mean people aren't out to get them. In my hometown of Stuart, some residents strongly oppose spending public money on a Brightline station because they believe, counterintuitively, that the station would bring more car traffic downtown. It would actually do the opposite, but once a juicy social media narrative gets rolling, it's hard to stop. Also is a popular conspiracy theory that Brightline's development was an elaborate ruse to get the tracks upgraded so freight trains could use them to haul hazardous materials. Anyone who has lived in Florida more than 5 minutes should know that no such ruse would be necessary. As long as it was done in the name of economic development, freight haulers could easily have gotten government permission for any requested upgrades. Despite rising ridership, Brightline is having trouble making debt payments and could face bankruptcy. If that happens, Brightline's creditors will be wise to let the company reorganize rather than going out of business. After all, a defunct train company has no chance of making good on what it owes. A functioning one might, given enough time. Meanwhile, there are a couple of questions the rest of us should be asking. If countries like Germany, Japan, and China can make high-speed rail work, why can't we? Are we content to just play with toy trains or daydream about nostalgia, or do we want to use trains to make our lives better? You're listening to a reading of today's issue of USA Today on the Niagara Frontier Radio Reading Service. The time is approximately 30 minutes after the hour. Doom jobbing is on the rise. Purpose applying can help job seekers break the cycle. Today's job seekers are finding themselves stuck in an endless loop, scrolling through job boards for hours, saving listings that feel almost right, and continuing their search long after motivation fades. What often begins as a focused effort to find a better role or an attempt to leave a tough job market can quickly turn repetitive and unfocused, with candidates applying for jobs that don't fully align with their goals but still feel worth a shot in the moment. That experience has a name: doom jobbing. It reflects a growing workplace behavior shaped by uncertainty in the job market and pressure to constantly stay in motion. What is doom jobbing? Doom jobbing is a recent workplace phenomenon that mirrors the compulsive pull of doom scrolling. It describes job seekers cycling through listings that don't fully match what they're looking for, yet applying anyway out of urgency or uncertainty. Though it can feel effective, it often turns into a cycle of applying without clear direction. It's like you're mindlessly looking at things and not necessarily doing anything productively with them, says Dr. Jamie Shapiro, an organizational psychologist. As you scroll through endless job listings, it triggers something in your brain. Anytime we scroll, we get those dopamine hits, she says. This often happens when people are burned out or when they're at an organization that doesn't make them feel appreciated, she says. This leaves job seekers to fantasize about other options. The behavior can create an illusion of control alongside the short-term dopamine hit. One downside of doom jobbing is that it can keep job seekers busy without truly moving them closer to the roles they actually want. Over time, that cycle can take a toll on confidence, networking, and long-term career direction. For many people, especially recent graduates, the constant stream of easy applications and rejections can become emotionally draining. Mindy Cox, the Chief People and Marketing Officer at O.C. Tanner, says the process often creates a real sense of failure for people who are applying broadly but seeing little traction. You apply to 500 jobs, chances are, even if you get one acceptance letter, you're getting 499 rejections, and that can't help but affect our hearts, she says. The effort is not equaling the outcome, and that feels frustrating. That rapid-fire approach to applying can also pull people away from more intentional networking and relationship building. It's easier to just apply to a preset application with one set of credentials, Cox says, rather than reaching out directly or building connections. Over time, that pattern can make it harder for workers to stay aligned with their long-term direction. Life is expensive right now, and of course you need something in the interim sometimes, Cox says, but if you're in the mindset of long-term thriving, you've got to get into a role where you feel that purpose. How doom jobbing took hold of the job market. Doom jobbing began to gain traction as AI, easy applied job boards, and a tough job market reshaped how people look for work. Rising layoffs across major industries and new graduates struggling to break into the workforce have added to the pressure, creating a wider sense of urgency in the job search. But according to Shapiro, there are a couple of additional factors worsening the trend. First is the way AI is being discussed in the workplace and the media, often through what she describes as a fear-based lens. That constant sense of threat, she adds, puts people into survival mode, in which burnout becomes more likely and people are left fearing for their jobs. In that state, job seekers and unhappy employees often turn to quick forms of relief, something that feels like progress or possibility, even if it isn't long-term. That behavior is also being accelerated by changes in the hiring system itself. Easy apply features and algorithm-driven job boards have made it faster than ever to submit applications, often with little friction or deliberation. We have a bunch of technology that's enabling awareness of openings, Cox says. Every day, multiple times a day, LinkedIn sends me jobs that fit my profile. They come right to my email, so even if I'm not looking, it's being served up. For job seekers, that constant visibility can create a fear of missing out. Doom jobbing can then offer a brief sense of control, a reminder that options still exist, even when the broader job search feels overwhelming. Why applying with purpose matters. Doom jobbing is a coping mechanism, Cox says. Applying with purpose is a strategy. Rather than responding to every opening, job seekers should focus their time on opportunities that better match what they are building toward, making each application more intentional and informed. Peter Duras, CEO and co-founder of Kick Resume, says this approach also improves a candidate's chance of getting noticed. Job seekers, he says, give themselves a much better chance of being invited for an interview if they've carefully considered whether they're a good fit for the job and tailored their application to make this clear. In a competitive hiring environment, that shift from volume to focus can help candidates stand out, not just by how many roles they apply to, but by how clearly they align with the roles they pursue. How to end the doom jobbing cycle. The first step to ending the doom jobbing cycle is self-awareness, Shapiro says. When job seekers notice they are doom jobbing, she suggests taking a pause to reset the search. She compares it to social media use, when time can slip away without you noticing. All of a sudden, you've been on social media for 15 minutes and it feels like 60 seconds, she says. That can happen from doom jobbing as well. From there, structure matters. Setting a clear goal and a time limit can help ensure the job search stays intentional rather than reactive or endless. A lot of the time, it's quality over quantity, Duras says. Just remind yourself that being a bit more selective about which jobs you apply for can actually improve your chances of getting an interview. That selectivity also extends to how applications are built. Tailoring your resume for every role might sound daunting, but in most cases, your existing resume is already most of the way there, he says. Read each job description carefully, make sure the relevant skills are surfaced clearly, and check the right keywords are in the right places. He adds that long-term progress depends on more than just applications alone. Focusing on skill development is key when it comes to developing a really intentional approach to your career progression. Taken together, the goal is to move away from doom jobbing and toward a more intentional approach. Getting a job is less about completing the most applications and more about applying with direction. Ask Johnny. Building trust is vital to unify dysfunctional teams. Let's be clear, organizations that fail to operate as one team will not reach their full potential. Question. Departments within my organization are increasingly competing with one another by highlighting each other's faults, and the mindset is shifting from we to I. This is affecting trust, collaboration, and overall performance. How can we reverse this trend and rebuild a culture of shared ownership and teamwork, moving people from silos back to one team thinking? Answer. Siloed behavior is one of the fastest ways to undermine an otherwise healthy organization. You can have the right strategy, strong talent, and ample resources, but if teams are working against each other, performance will suffer every time. Let's be clear. Organizations that fail to operate as one team will not reach their full potential. Internal competition that turns into finger-pointing isn't healthy tension, it's dysfunction. So how do you reverse it? It starts at the top. Culture is set by what leaders model and what they tolerate. If senior leaders are protecting their own turf, competing for credit, or calling out failures without shared accountability, that behavior will cascade across the organization. Leadership must visibly reinforce a one-team mindset through shared goals, cross-functional priorities, and consistent messaging that success is collective, not individual. At the same time, that's not an excuse for poor individual performance. A one-team mindset doesn't mean shared accountability becomes a place to hide. High-performing organizations expect both, people who collaborate across boundaries and deliver individually. High performance and strong collaboration are expected together. One doesn't excuse the absence of the other. And expectations alone won't sustain that balance. They have to be reinforced. This is where incentives come into play. If departments are being measured and rewarded in isolation, you're unintentionally encouraging silos. Align performance metrics to enterprise outcomes. When leaders are held accountable for shared results, collaboration stops being a suggestion and becomes a requirement. It's also important to address the environment you've created. In low-trust cultures, people protect themselves. They document, deflect, and blame. In high-trust cultures, people take ownership, even when things go wrong. That doesn't happen by accident. It requires leaders who create clarity, encourage responsible risk-taking, and hold people accountable without defaulting to blame. You can also get ahead of this through hiring and onboarding. Be explicit about expectations. Bring in people who value collaboration and are motivated by team success, not just individual recognition, and reinforce those expectations early and often. Finally, all this needs to be connected to the bottom line. Business outcomes should be the unifying force. Leadership and HR need to make that connection unmistakable, helping employees see how shared success drives individual success. When teams operate as one, performance improves, opportunities expand, and the entire organization moves forward together. You're listening to a reading of today's issue of USA Today on the Niagara Frontier Radio Reading Service. The time is approximately 45 minutes after the hour. Transfer of death deeds on the rise. Todd's can be appropriate for many. The oldest Americans still own more than a third of the nation's homes, but they need to face their mortality and figure out soon how they plan to transfer their properties to their heirs, experts said. Boomers and older are just 18% of the U.S. population, but control a staggering 34.1% of the housing stock value, 29.6 million homes, and $13.8 trillion in total housing value, according to a census data analysis from the National Association of Home Builders. With so much at stake, estate planning experts are urging seniors to carefully consider what the most efficient way will be to hand over what's often their largest and most valuable asset to heirs. Over the past several decades, transfer on death deeds, TODs, have gained popularity for their simplicity and low cost, but they're not available to everyone. It depends on where you live. Plus, since estate planning is always highly individualized, TODs might not be right for everyone, experts said. Every family is different, and Michael Chua, a Los Angeles-based attorney, they need to look at their assets to make the decision of whether to use a TOD or trust. What is a TOD? A TOD is a simple document that allows real property, such as homes and land, to transfer to designated beneficiaries upon the death of the property owner. They are simple and inexpensive to execute, only requiring a form to be completed, signed, and recorded with the county where the property is located. Importantly, they allow property to avoid potentially long and costly probate and transfer quickly to heirs. Missouri first adopted TODs in 1989. Now more than 30 states offer them, or a version of them, according to Nolo.com, a legal self-help platform and publisher. Are TODs too good to be true? TODs can be appropriate for many Americans who don't have large, complicated estates, experts said. They're best used for smaller estates, said Don Ford, an attorney at Ford plus Bergner, LLP. They avoid probate and are not as complicated as trusts. Simple estates that don't have a wide variety of assets can benefit too, said Corey Kruger, managing partner of Hensley and Kruger. If someone owns only a home and financial accounts, such as a brokerage account, 401k, checking and savings accounts, a TOD for the home and naming beneficiaries on the other financial accounts could suffice and save people a lot of money, he said. Adding beneficiaries to financial accounts doesn't cost anything, and setting up a TOD can cost hundreds of dollars, much less than a trust, attorneys said. Establishing a trust can cost thousands of dollars, plus possible ongoing administration fees. However, TODs do have some serious drawbacks, estate lawyers said. A TOD is a targeted instrument just for a transfer at death. It does not take care of other things, Chua said. For example, if mom's alive but incapacitated, the heir legally owns nothing and has zero rights to manage the house. A TOD assumes nothing happens to mom and dad. They die in line, and then the house goes to one kid, so there are no conflicts, he said. A TOD also doesn't protect the home from creditors if the heir has unpaid debts. Since a TOD transfers property to an individual, the house is in that individual's name, and creditors can come after it, Kruger said. Who shouldn't use a TOD? Families with large estates and a wide variety of assets should probably consider a trust, especially if they value flexibility, experts said. Trusts also avoid probate but allow for life changes. A trust allows you to plan for incapacity. You can name a successor or co-trustee to manage the trust and its assets for your benefit, lawyers said. Trusts allow for detailed instructions and conditions for inheritances, covering circumstances like multiple beneficiaries, specific percentages for each heir, or the death of a beneficiary. They also can be updated to account for changes in life circumstances, such as a divorce, marriage, or birth. Basically, a TOD is a surgical tool for a very specific purpose to avoid probate, but it's not doing much else, Chua said. A trust is a whole toolbox that can handle many issues that may arise. Analysis. U.S. tech dominance hits new highs, presents risks. The charge higher in U.S. technology stocks has made broader indexes as reliant as ever on the group, and more vulnerable should those market leaders trip up. With stunning gains over the past 2 months, the S&P 500 technology sector now accounts for more than 39% of the market capitalization of the overall benchmark index. its highest on record and above the level it reached during the 2000 internet bubble. If the small number of tech stocks that have been leading this market higher roll over, by definition, the indexes are going to roll over, said Matthew Maley, chief market strategist at Miller Tabak. And when the indexes roll over in a meaningful way, the money flows inevitably reverse. The massive build-out to support expected booming AI use has lifted profit estimates for semiconductor and other tech companies, and with it, their shares. There is clearly an overarching AI theme to what is working, said Liz Ann Saunders, chief investment strategist at the Schwab Center for Financial Research. While tech has long dominated the S&P 500, its recent outperformance bolstered its sway. Since the market's March low for the year, the tech sector soared nearly 47%, more than doubling the S&P 500's gain in that time, led by semiconductors. Micron shares jumped 230% in that time, while Intel and Advanced Micro Devices gained more than 160%. However, in this bull market that began in October 2022, Turnquist noted that an average of 61% of the index has traded above their respective 200 DMAs, near current levels. While market breadth has been underwhelming for a market making new highs, this is pretty characteristic of the bull market we've been in, Turnquist said. Another sign of a narrower rally is the S&P 500, which is influenced by companies with large market values, beating an equal weight version of the benchmark index, which many investors view as a gauge of the average index stock. The S&P 500, as of May 29th, has outperformed its equal weight counterpart by the largest amount in a 9-week period, according to LSEG DataStream data dating to 1990. That relative strength means the largest companies are producing much higher returns relative to the average company, said David Lefkowitz, head of U.S. securities at UBS Global Wealth Management. The firm wants clients to make sure they are not too heavily allocated toward winners of the past few years, Lefkowitz said. We do think the AI trade has further to go, but we also think this is an opportunity to rebalance and ensure that portfolios don't have too much risk, Lefkowitz said. Park ranger dies after fall on Mount McKinley. A National Park Service ranger became the fourth person to die on Mount McKinley, North America's tallest peak, in just more than a week. Robin Pendery, a mountaineering ranger assigned to Alaska's Denali National Park and Preserve, died the afternoon of June 4th, according to a Park Service news release June 5th. Officials said Pendery of Enumclaw, Washington, fell into a crevasse during a patrol near the 14,000-foot camp of Mount McKinley, known to Alaska Native communities as Denali, which has a summit of 20,310 feet. Park Service personnel immediately responded, but Pendery didn't survive, the agency said. Her death remained under investigation. Our mountaineering rangers dedicate themselves to serving visitors and helping others in one of the most challenging environments in the world, Brooke Merrill, superintendent of Denali National Park and Preserve, said in a statement. Today we mourn the loss of a valued colleague, friend, and teammate. Our thoughts are with Robin's family and loved ones. Just more than a week ago, 3 Latvian climbers died in the area of Denali Pass at about 18,200 feet, May 27th, Reuters reported. The Latvian Mountaineering Association identified them as Ines Pucha, Vija Olte, and Reners Koenig Salix, according to a Google Translate from Latvian of the group's announcement. A fourth member of the group survived the fall and was rescued the next day before being flown via air ambulance to a hospital, the Park Service said in a news release. 3 other members didn't fall and attended to their fallen team members before returning to the high camp at about 17,200 feet. The Park Service said Mount McKinley's typical climbing season runs from late April to mid-July. The middle of May into June is the busiest time of year for climbers, though colder temperatures and strong winds are common to May and June can often have snowfall. You're listening to a reading of articles and features from USA Today for June 9th on the Niagara Frontier Radio Reading Service. We'll return for more readings after this short break. Your reader for this hour has been Patty Young.
You're listening to the Niagara Frontier Radio Reading Service. We broadcast daily readings of printed matter to those who are blind or have a print disability throughout Buffalo, Western New York, and Southern Ontario's Niagara Peninsula. Almost 40 years and more than 300,000 hours of radio readings to those without sight. Our broadcast signal is provided at no charge by WNED. Niagara Frontier Radio Reading Service broadcast studios are at 1199 Harlem Road in Cheektowaga. Please let others know about your Niagara Frontier Radio Reading Service. For more information, call us at 716-821-5555.
Now, with our reading of articles from today's issue of USA Today, your reader for this hour is Mikey. And we're going to continue with sports here. Judge rules for Sorsby play in 26. This is written by John Bryce. Texas Tech quarterback Brendan Sorsby's college football career effectively just got a Hail Mary reprieve. The District Court of Lubbock County, Texas, on June 8th, awarded Sorsby a temporary injunction against the NCAA, restoring his eligibility. The NCAA, which ruled Sorsby's permanently ineligible to play for his gambling activity, issued a scathing statement on the decision via X. Quote, "The NCAA strongly disagrees with the court's ruling in Sorsby's case and is deeply concerned about the damaging, far-reaching, and broadly destabilizing ramifications of the outcome, which undermines and corrupts the integrity of sports," unquote. The NCAA wrote, quote, "The NCAA is committed to supporting student-athlete mental health, but must continue to aggressively defend against actions that defraud college athletics and threaten competitive integrity, such as betting on one's own sport." The NCAA could elect to appeal the judge's decision, USA Today Sports has learned, just as Sorsby would have been within his rights to appeal the judge's ruling had his request for an injunction relief been denied. USA Today Sports has reached out to Texas Tech's officials for comments on Sorsby's legal victory. After 2 seasons at Cincinnati, Sorsby signed as a transfer to Texas Tech in January, but has been under investigation since April for violating NCAA gambling rules that turned into Sorsby's admission to having placed, quote, "thousands of bets," unquote. Notably, Sorsby bet dozens of times on his initial college football program, Indiana University, during his freshman season, and on June 1st, in a Texas courtroom, Sorsby petitioned Judge Ken Curry for injunction relief. In granting the temporary injunction, Curry wrote on behalf of the court that, quote, "applicant has demonstrated he will suffer a probably imminent and irreparable injury if the court does not grant this temporary injunction, because he will be unable to participate as a member of Texas Tech's 2026 football team, including Texas Tech's 2026 football season, and 1. benefit from elite coaching, training, resources, camaraderie, and regimen that only being a member of a Division I football team can provide. 2. build the skills necessary to maximize his own success during the college football season, as well as that of Texas Tech's football team and each of its players, and 3. make an informed decision regarding whether to enter the 26th NFL supplemental draft," unquote. The NCAA noted in its own court filings in response to Sorsby's formal request for injunctive relief that Sorsby had not voluntarily sought to enter the outpatient treatment center to treat Sorsby's, quote, "gambling addiction," unquote, until he and Texas Tech's officials were notified that he was under investigation for his gambling activities. Court documents showed Sorsby admitted to dozens of bets on Indiana. Sorsby argued he never bet against his teammates or their performances. Okay. Pitch of the season. In today's era of analytics and technology, one team takes control inside the dugout. This is written by Gabe Blocks. Washington. Miami Marlins manager Clayton McCullough was leading his ace, Sandy Alcantara, for the 7 strong innings he pitched against the National League's most potent offense, and delivering the usual platitudes one would expect in a victory post-mortem. He mixed his pitches well, McCullough said of the former Cy Young Award winner, used his entire arsenal, kept James Wood, the most dangerous man on the Washington Nationals, off balance in limiting the 6'7" slugger to an infield single and striking him out twice. Yet the credit for what went on between the lines really only extended to Alcantara's execution of the pitches. Let me just turn to page 7 and finish this article. Wow, this is a big article. The roadmap to set up and punch out opposing batters was almost exclusively the domain of 2 men perched in a photo well next to the Marlins dugout, armed with reams of data and flashing numbers and hand gestures to catcher Joe Mack, who would then glance at a wristband on his left arm and relay their order to Alcantara by pushing buttons on his PitchCom device. And then Alcantara would deliver the pitch of choice. The technologically crude relay system belies the stupendous amount of data informing every pitch decision, and it represents the latest modern battleground in baseball's never-ending conflict between touch and feel and decision sciences. Since September, the Marlins have called pitches from the dugout, taking away the traditional task of the catcher to strip the emotion and proverbial fog of war from pitch selection. McCullough and the Marlins say the upside is nearly as much lightening the mental load for their young catchers and pitchers as it is the ability to process data in real time from the remove of the dugout. And after years of pitch calling remaining almost exclusively the domain of the catcher, there are now, in this PitchCom era, 3 ways pitch decisions are made. The vast majority still prefer the catcher calling the pitch and punching a button to alert the pitcher. PitchCom, which also enables pitchers to call their own games, pushing a button on their belt to inform the catcher what they're going to do. And then there are the Marlins, whose stance seems largely at odds with scores of pitchers and catchers, who say the men in the arena have the ultimate feel for what pitch should come next. We're in a different area, obviously, of baseball. Analytics drives so many decisions. Veteran San Diego Padres right-hander Lucas Giolito tells USA Today Sports. But that old school part of me, man, that pitcher-catcher relationship, that communication, before and during a game, reading swings, reading at-bats, I think there's something players get better at with experience, especially catchers. Game plans are only as good as what it gives you right when you go out there, and sometimes you throw it out the window and make an adjustment based on how the hitters are doing. Do I still think that's possible, calling pitches from the dugout? Yeah, but now you're getting a coach involved. For me, it feels like an extra step that's not really necessary. For now, the trend is a drip, not a flood. The Colorado Rockies are also calling some pitches from the dugout, though that's within the context of a massive organizational overhaul that aims to solve the dilemma of pitching at Mile High Coors Field. The New York Mets dabbled in it during spring training. Others have recoiled. Seattle Mariners all-star catcher Cal Raleigh called it, quote, stupid. Another contingent wants to see proof in the pudding, which leads down to a rabbit hole of cause versus correlation. The Marlins serving as the lab rats. Call is coming from inside the dugout. As the Marlins are perhaps the definition of inconclusive, unquote, they're having a fair season now 31-35 after winning 5 of 6 and exchanging 4 in the 5th place in the National League East with the Mets with some frequency. It's not exactly the large step forward the franchise perhaps hoped for after Miami finished the 2024 season on a 54-32 heater. By September, the club decided to start calling pitches from the dugout, a practice the Marlins began with their Class AAA Jacksonville, Florida club. Come 2026, Jacksonville pitching coach Rob Marcello was promoted to the big club, serving as an assistant pitching coach, and he and Major League field coordinator Aaron Lenhart are often the ones relaying the signals, somehow even more analog version of the goofy signs and poster boards college football teams use to relay plays in from the sideline. The call from the dugout is typically signaled within 2 to 4 seconds of the pitch clock countdown beginning. Joe Mack or Liam Hicks push the buttons, and the pitcher fires. Quote, it's a lot different and it's new to me, Alcantara tells USA Today Sports. Quote, I've been in the game a long time and all, so it's different to me, but I just got to keep trust because they are trying to do their best, help the young pitchers and the young catchers. I think it's a great idea for us to get better. Alcantara, the 2022 NL Cy Young Award winner who had Tommy John surgery at the end of 2023 campaign, is the senior member of the staff. Otherwise, it's largely a young and moldable group of pitchers, with right-hander Max Meyer among those taking a significant step forward this season. Despite the unique pitching arrangement, they did manage to import a handful of arms from other organizations, notably closer Pete Fairbanks and setup man John King. King, the former St. Louis Cardinal and Texas Ranger, has benefited from the pitching department reducing his reliance on his sinker, a very good pitch that he'd thrown 70% of the time. The team helped him add a sweeper, and now he's throwing the sinker just 30% of the time. More than a third of the way through the season, King has reduced his whip from 1.39 entering the season to a career best of 0.659, and his hits per 9 innings from 10.1 to 3.3. All the analytics and data they have, and them being emotionally apart from the game with all those numbers, what they want you to do is have a good mix, says King. Now I've become more unpredictable, and I think they do a good job of seeing the hitter's weakness, but also relying on the pitcher's strengths and how they want to sequence their strengths together. Notably, King says, the mental load has been considerably lightened. Yes, King and the catchers still do significant amounts of homework and pre-game prep, but, quote, perhaps not as in-depth as I've done in the past, and I kind of like that, unquote. because I don't think we need to be thinking about 20 different things at once. Where do I throw my sinker? Where's the best place to put this off speed, especially with 2 strikes? And while taking away pitch calling duties from Hicks might be professionally neutering him to some degree, it's hard to argue with the entire contribution this season. You're listening to a reading of the issue of USA Today on the Niagara Frontier Radio Reading Service. The time is 15 minutes after the hour. Okay, now let me get us back. Hicks was a Rule 5 pick from the Detroit Tigers, who struck on the big league squad throughout the 2025 season and stayed in the organization. McCullough notes he still has to earn his way onto the roster this spring, and he did much more than that. Now he ranks tied for 3rd in the NL with 47 RBIs, has smacked 12 homers, and has an .825 OPS while splitting catching duties with rookie Joe Mack. In an unprecedented information age in the game, the Marlins' hope was that reducing the catcher's homework would allow them to concentrate on other facets of their game. Hicks would seem to be a beneficiary, even if the club has essentially taken away one of the core duties of his position. Quote, "Yeah, calling a game is fun, rewarding after a win," says Hicks. "So you're missing a little bit of that, but you can also impact a game a lot of ways as a catcher. Coaches are doing a lot more homework than the catchers do. There are going to be times when you're not sure why they're calling something, but in the end, it's what's right. They've never called a pitch without a reason behind it," unquote. More reasons, really, than you can imagine. A nightly grade for the pitch callers. Excuse me. If there's any upside for the catchers getting stripped of pitch calling duties, it's gaining the ability to say, "Hey, don't look at me," after an opposing batter deposits a pitch over the fence. Quote, "I feel the catchers because I feel for the catchers, because I feel like it handcuffs them, but it also alleviates the pressure," says Blue Jays ace Kevin Gausman. "It's coming straight from the dugout, so if it doesn't work, it's like, well, you guys told me to throw that slider." There are positives and negatives to both of it, but I never thought I'd see it in the big leagues. Marcelo, the 35-year-old assistant pitching coach, is the man likely charged with bringing it there. He workshopped pitch calling as a Class AAA Jacksonville's pitching coach, then was added to the staff this year. He sets up in something resembling a sniper's nest with Major League Field Coordinator Aaron Lenhart, also known as the guy who invented the torpedo bat, and they flash signs to Hicks or Mack. By night's end, the Marlins information machine will spit out validation or scorn beyond what the final score might indicate. There is an analytical guide post-game that they'll give me, Marcelo tells USA Today Sports. "We hold meetings 2 or 3 times a week with everybody to ask, quote, 'Hey, what are we missing? What could we do better? How is this going?' For Marcello, the preparation never ends. He aims to be so well prepared that he knows what the next pitch, sometimes 2, will be immediately after signaling one to his catcher. And he pushes back gently on the notion that coaches outside the field of play can't see what's going on. Quote, I do think there's a lot to see from the side, he says. Hey, this is the guy on time for the fastball or not. And a lot of it is catchers giving information to me and having that in-game communication. And then a conversation after. How do we navigate it? Make it smoother roads. It is admittedly strange to see, less than a decade after the Houston Astros sign-stealing gamut helped them win the World Series, a team so publicly pass along signs when the PitchCom system was designed to largely skirt that. Opponents have noticed, quote, you don't push a button from the dugout, you're giving signals, says Baltimore Orioles pitcher Chris Bassett, whose team won 2 of 3 games at Miami in April. Those signals are pretty easily deciphered to tell you pretty much what's exactly coming. Teams that do that, keep doing it. It helps us. Marcelo insists the Marlins system keeps their signals buttoned up, and they are. Predictably vigilant about what they see and hear. He uses a privacy screen to ensure his information can't be picked up by camera. There are a lot of sign cards we can put up out there, he says. In a game, in an inning, if we feel like they might be on to us, I can change things right there without taking a break. Quote, if there's a camera around, you can't see unless you're dead in front of it. We know teams will try, but it's how you protect it all, unquote. All at the push of a button. As this experiment unfolds, an answer to the grander question, is it worth it, may remain elusive. Despite the off-season trade of Edward Cabrera, the club's ERA has dropped from 4.60 to 4.24 so far this season, although Alcantara is a year further away from elbow surgery and Meyer, sporting a 2.81 ERA, might have been due for a large step forward. Legions of pitchers will do it differently. Bassett, Washington Nationals left-hander, Foster Griffin, and Tampa Bay Rays Nick Martinez are among those who call pitches themselves. Let's see. Griffin says it's because his 8-pitch offerings and their potential locations make it far more efficient with the pitch clock always lurking. Bassett's battery mate, Samuel Basallo, agrees with his pitcher that, quote, the guys on the field have a better feel for what's happening, unquote. And Martinez, who has a 2.29 ERA for the Rays, says a simple gesture from his catcher can strongly affirm that he pushed the right button. Quote, it goes back to that old school mindset of conviction. The wrong pitch with the right conviction plays better than the right pitch with the wrong conviction, says Martinez. Quote, sometimes I'm just convicted in a pitch. I think it'd be convinced, but honestly it isn't. I'm just convicted in a pitch, and I'll call it, and Nick Fortes or Hunter Fiducia will be catching me and nod their head and acknowledge to me I was on the right page. Quote, I beat them to the punch, unquote. In Miami, that's the coach's job. You can see the conviction and the speed with which Marcello and Lienhart throw their signs in the air. Simple gestures with weeks of research and dozens of reports and countless meetings behind it. Soon, the league will let them know if it was all so much wasted motions. Major League Baseball is a copycat industry, and time will determine if the Marlins are truly on to something. They're not waiting around for such validation. Quote, "It provides us the opportunity to get in what we feel is the most appropriate pitch. Selection A every time," says McCullough. "We continue to evaluate. We're looking at certain metrics and will continue to do that. We're gaining more and more information over time as we do this and still believe it's what's best for us, the Marlins. It hasn't changed why we still feel like it's beneficial." Okay. Let me scoot back to let's see, what would we like to read? Hamlin is not ready to give up seat. Right now, Denny Hamlin isn't showing any signs of slowing down. The 45-year-old driver won his second consecutive NASCAR Cup Series race on Sunday, June 7th, winning the Firekeepers Casino 400 at Michigan International Speedway by the largest margin of victory in his career. .11 seconds. Whew. Hamlin now has 3 wins on the season, also taking the checkered flag at Nashville and Las Vegas. He's second in the points standing, trailing Tyler Reddick by 51. Quote, "This might be the most exceptional thing he's done," Joe Gibbs, owner of Hamlin's number 2 Toyota, said after the race. While Hamlin is putting forth some of the best racing of his career on the track, questions about retirement will swirl around him, as he is the oldest full-time driver competing in the top-level Cup Series. After winning at Michigan, which gave him 63 victories in the Cup Series, putting him in a tie for 9th with the late Kyle Busch, Hamlin seemingly confirmed what his retirement plans might be in a post-race interview with Prime Sports. Quote, "Well, I mean, I have a commitment to Gibbs no matter what, whether we win the championship this year or not. At the end of next year, listen, I told them, just check with me in 6 months. But I don't want to leave them kind of in a flux," Hamlin said. They've got a great driver in Brent Cruz. It's going to be ready, more than likely by the end of the year. So I don't know. It'd be hard. If it was right now, it would be really hard. But I find it hard to believe that we're going to be at this level at this time next year. The Athletic reported last August that Hamlin's contract with JGR runs through the 2027 season and mentioned Cruz as a possible replacement for the number 2 Toyota if Hamlin decides to walk away. Cruz, an 18-year-old from Hickory, North Carolina, signed to JGR as a development driver. He is placed in the top 5 of 12 second-tier O'Reilly Auto Parts races this season, has 4 top 10 finishes in 11 Craftsman Truck Series competitions, and has 6 victories in the third-tier ARCA Menard Series. In this post-race season press conference with reporters, Hamlin explained that he's pessimistic about being able to race this well for years to come because he believes Father Time will catch up with him. Hamlin has never won a Cup Series championship. He's placed in the top 4 7 times, including last season when he finished second to Kyle Larson. You're listening to a reading of today's issue of USA Today on the Niagara Frontier Radio Reading Service. The time is 30 minutes after the hour. Now we'll switch over from sports and see what's going on in the life section of USA Today. Lizzo rebuilt herself and found a new bold groove. This is written by Melissa Rigori. After a swoosh of lulling strings, Lizzo gets to the point. Quote, "Here's a toast to wasted time and all the energy I put into these people," she sings on Toast, the opening track of her new album, Bitch, out now. It has been 4 years since the candid singer-songwriter born Melissa Jefferson released a new record, and the 12 tracks on her latest showcase, a Lizzo who has been through it, dug deep, and has a few things to say. She also expands her signature amalgamation of R&B, hip-hop, and pop, as heard as hits Good as Hell, Truth Hurts, and About Damn Time, with elements of go-go music, Sexy Ladies, which samples the classic go-go track Sexy Lady from Washington, D.C. stalwarts, UCB, and saucy sync funk, That Girl. Lizzo cherished flute gets the spotlight on the jazz-flavored Too Nice, and she'll further underscore her love of the instrument with the September 8th release of her first children's book, Little Lizzo Meets Sasha B. Flurton, which features a, quote, smart and brassy flute, unquote, as a main character in the adventure story. In an unguarded interview with USA Today, Lizzo, 38, talks about the meaning behind the title of her new album, how she pulled herself out of depression, and the meaning of body positivity. Question: with this album, do you feel like you're reintroducing yourself or redefining who Lizzo is? Lizzo: I don't think I have to redefine myself. I think this is about reclaiming who I am. A lot of my identity has been manipulated by people outside of me. So this album is me taking that back, showing the Lizzo everybody knows and loves, letting her tell her side of the story, and just letting her play again. Why was reclaiming the word bitch important for the album? There's this Cat Williams joke he made about me, where he was like, they'll come for anybody. They'll come after Lizzo, and she's unproblematic. And that just goes to show you can be fat, you can be black, you can't be no fat black bitch. And I was like, whoa, that is the realist. Like, God forbid you're having a bad day, or God forbid you weren't rainbows and sunshine one day. You'll get crucified, especially as a black woman in this industry and in society. I wrote the song around that with a sample from Missy Elliott's She's a Bitch and the interpolation of Meredith Brooks' Bitch on top. So it was like bitch on sandwich. You've also changed the album title from Love in Real Life and said that shifted the tone from something softer to something more bold. Why was that important? Let's turn the page and find out. It was very intentional. The world has changed a lot in the last few years, not just politically, but emotionally and psychologically. I had to change with it. Artists don't project what the world should be. We reflect what it is. Right now, we're in a time of conflict, so I'm fighting for myself and that's where the energy of this album comes from. There's still humor on the album, like in Whose Hair Is This? That has a great kicker. That was the last song I wrote for the album. She laughs. Yeah, that really happened. I was freaking out over some hair that I found and then realized it was from a wig I wore. I was like, this is so funny. I had to put that in a song because it's relatable. It was like you were tripping and there was no reason to trip. You've been open about going through a dark period a few years ago. How did you get to a place where you could write a song like Happy to Be? That's a really good question because I don't think I write happy songs when I'm happy. I write happy songs when I'm trying to be happy. I wrote that song when I was searching for gratitude. I remember thinking, I'm not feeling this. And then I had this vision of myself singing to my fans in the audience. I got emotional, I cried, and that's when I found the gratitude. It became about reminding myself where I was and where I'm going. And then I have my fans to help me get back to joy. You've always been very much yourself in public. Has that changed? I'm way more protective of myself now. I choose what I want to share and how I want to share. I'm an oversharer by nature. I'll type things out and not post them. But I've learned the internet doesn't need every thought in my head. I have boundaries now, and everything I share is on my terms. Has that shift come from wanting to avoid backlash? It's not even about what people say back to me. I don't really care about that. It's about responsibility. I have people depending on me, my family, my team. I have too much to lose, so I've learned how to protect my heart and my mind. Your message around body positivity has also evolved. How do you see it now? It evolved before my body ever did, because I knew I was going to change, whether I got bigger, smaller, older, whatever. Body positivity originally meant we deserve to exist, especially for people who have been erased from media and culture. But people changed that definition, so I don't subscribe to the new version. What I've always been about is making space for everybody, not just one kind of body. It's like the goalposts keep moving. Yeah, like, oh, body positivity just means fat, and that's not true. Body positivity is a movement that people who are in the disabled community, who are in the plus-size community, and indigenous and queer trans community. It was a, quote, hey, we deserve to exist, unquote. We have been erased in culture, in media, in society. And we're just saying that we deserve to exist and be happy about it. You recently played a series of jazz club shows, which are very different from arenas. What do you get from those kinds of performances? Freedom. In an arena, you've got 20,000 people, a huge crew. Everything has to be exact. You can't just say, let me try this real quick. In a jazz club, I can meander, show different sides of my musicianship. It's more intimate. You can feel the audience in a different way. But I also came up that way, playing small rooms for 50 people. So it's not new for me. It's a return to my roots. It's interesting that you say that because it does seem as if there are so many new artists bypassing the climb and heading straight to the arenas. There are so many expletive arena tours going on all at once right now that it's unprecedented. And I mean, I'm adding to the fray. Yeah, but you paid those dues. It's different because I have a touring fan base that's 10 years old of people who love to come out to our shows. However, you've got people who are TikTok famous that are playing arena shows 1 year out in the game. I just feel like that jump has shifted a lot of things. It shifted the quality of a show, the quality of the showman. It's also just like, yo, you were supposed to open for someone in an arena first. I'm not knocking it, but I came up touring, building a fan base. I'm going to be doing this when I'm 70, like Tina Turner. You have a children's book coming. What do you hope kids take away? It's about trusting yourself and believing in who you are. The character goes on this adventure trying to find her identity in all these different places, but she realizes it's been within her the whole time. I also want kids to get excited about music, about playing an instrument, about being creative. That's what saved me when I was young, and honestly, I just want it to be fun. I want it to feel like the music on the page. Okay. Now let's see what else is on the front page here. They said, what? The Star's best quotes. It's just terrible. I'm awful. I have a real affection for it. But I was like, oh my God, I suck, I suck. This just doesn't work. Paul Rudd to Seth Meyers in a sit-down interview after Rudd's acting career at Tribeca Festival in New York on June 4th. The Ant-Man star roasted himself over his performance in one of his first movies, the reviled horror sequel Halloween, Curse of Michael Myers. In the sixth Halloween movie from '95, Rudd played Tommy Doyle, the older version of the boy Laurie Strode, Jamie Lee Curtis, babysat in the original horror classic. The film had a messy production history that resulted in two different cuts, one which ends strangely with Rudd's character stopping the slasher villain Michael Myers with rune stones. Myers playfully asked Rudd at Tribeca what he feels he brought to Tommy Doyle, to which the Anaconda actor deadpanned, quote, I guess I kind of a burning intensity. Okay. And now we'll see From Pink to Politics. Joyful show is pointed to. This is written by Patrick Ryan. New York. Tony Award voters were happy to get lost in Schmigadoon. The new Broadway comedy made off with major hardware at the ceremony Sunday, June 7th, winning 4 statuettes, including Best Musical, based on the Apple TV series. The fizzy throwback spoofs Golden Age musicals and follows on the Rocks couple who are trapped in a town where people sing and dance incessantly. The telecast was chock full of mesmerizing performances from Evita star Rachel Ziegler, who took our breath away with her generous tribute to a chorus line, and the mind-blowing cast of Cats, the Jellicle Ball, who turned Radio City Music Hall into a euphoric queer dance floor. Hollywood stars such as John Lithgow from Giant, Laurie Metcalf, Death of a Salesman, and Alden Ehrenreich, Becky Shaw, each scooped up acting prizes, while 2 of the season's very best offerings, Titanic and Two Strangers, Carry a Cake Across New York, sadly went home empty-handed. Here's the night's most unmissable moment. And just before we hear those unmissable moments, let me just remind you, you're listening to a reading of today's issue of USA Today on the Niagara Frontier Radio Reading Service. The time is 45 minutes after the hour. Pink Dazzles with Megan Thee Stallion, Neil Patrick Harris. Pink delivered the best Tony opening of the past decade, and genuinely one of the greatest ever, with a joy bomb performance that was celebratory as it was hilarious. The self-referential number began with Pink dangling from the ceiling in a Peter Pan getup and singing, "I'm Flying," but armed with some sage words from Neil Patrick Harris and a remarkable defying gravity battle cry, the Grammy winner pivoted to something more her style with a Broadway-themed spin on her Moulin Rouge hit, Lady Marmalade. From there, she invited the cast of all the nominated Broadway musicals to join her in singing the steamy earworm, belting the likes of Deborah Cox and Leah Michele, and giving absurdly silly shout-outs to Leslie Manville and Carrie Coon. The 96-year-old June Squibb and trans actress Dylan Mulvaney took the mic at various points throughout the head-spinning number, as did rapper Megan Thee Stallion, who cracked a joke about the musical Two Strangers Carry a Cake Across New York as she was lifted across the stage. "I don't even know these guys," the rapper said with a wink, pointing to her backside and twerking. "They were just two strangers carrying some cake." Bourguignon stands up for Palestinians and immigrants. In one of the night's biggest surprises, Ali Louis Bourguignon, I'm sorry if I'm not pronouncing that correctly, beat presumed front-runners Andre de Shields, Cats, The Jellicle Ball, and Ben Levi Ross, Ragtime, to win featured actor in a musical for The Lost Boys. Bourguignon, who plays a beguiling vampire rocker, tied the show's themes into his speech as he spoke out against racist billionaires, colonizers, and fascists. Quote, "This is dedicated to the beautiful tapestry of immigrant families who make this country really special," Bourguignon said on stage. Quote, "May you one day not have to audition for the empathy that should be freely given by this country that benefits from your beauty, to the queer and trans communities that always will exist, no matter what people in power try to take away from them, to the people of Palestine who deserve to live a free life, a full life, without occupation. For Arab theater makers and artists, may we continue to tell our stories and show our faces, so our humanity becomes undeniable and our families can no longer be written off as merely collateral damage," continued the actor, who is the son of a Moroccan immigrant. Quote, "If there's one thing we can learn from vampires, it's that life is short, but that's a gift. Find beauty in the ephemeral and gratitude in what is not promised, and always invest in the people that want to see you blossom." Unquote. Queen Jean becomes the first openly trans person to win a Tony. Queen Jean, whose eye-popping attire helps bring sparkle and glamour to Cats' Jellicle Ball, made history as the first openly trans person to win a Tony when she took home Best Costume Design. "Happy Pride, y'all, happy Pride," Jean exclaimed at the top of her speech. "We are here for the legacy of queer people and trans people. We are taking up space in ways we have to take up space. We have to shift the paradigm." Jean, an activist who also founded the Black Trans Liberation Organization, joined a growing group of trans and gender non-conforming actors who have been nominated for Tonys. In 2023, J. Harrison Ghee, Some Like It Hot, and Alex Newell, Shucked, became the first non-binary Tony winners, and the show's nearly 80-year history. Pink proves she's Broadway ready with Chicago performance. If her jaw-dropping opening number didn't already convince you, then Pink's sizzle tribute to Chicago is irrefutable proof that we need her on Broadway ASAP. The pop star brought impeccable showmanship and sultry vocals to the showstopper, All That Jazz, stepping into the role of Velma Kelly, made famous by Cheetah Rivera and Catherine Zeta-Jones. Queen Latifah, who co-starred with Zeta-Jones in 2002, the Oscar-winning movie Chicago, introduced the anniversary medley, which included cheeky cameos from Cedric the Entertainer, Jesse Tyler Ferguson, and Whitney Levitt in the Cell Block Tango. From one mother hen to another, Latifah said, passing the torch to her fellow matron, Mama Morton. Alex Newell, who took the stage for a full-throated rendition of When You're Good to Mama. Rudolph Escola spin comedy gold as Tony presenters. Were you seeing double? Cole Escola, who created and starred as Mary Todd Lincoln in Oh Mary, presented the first award of the night alongside Saturday Night Live favorite Maya Rudolph, who plays the First Lady in the outrageous Broadway comedy. Family, redemption, justice, Escola said solemnly as they walked up to the podium. Passion, tuberculosis, a big shoe, Rudolph added. These are all words. The droll duo riffed on this year's Tony nominees, including Oedipus, a Greek tragedy about a man who kills his father and marries his mother. It's a play that asks the question, can women really have it all? Escola deadpanned. Yes, I have an SUV and a horse, Rudolph said, but enough about my love life. Shoshana Bean passionately honors Army of Women. After 2 decades on Broadway and 3 Tony nominations, Bean finally picked up her first prize for featured actress in a musical for The Lost Boys. In the hit vampire spectacle, which is based on the 1987 cult classic film, which is based, the powerhouse Wicked veteran plays the single mom of 2 teenage sons, L.J. Bennett and Benjamin Pakejack. This is for the mamas, said Bean, breathless and emotional in her acceptance speech. This is for the single mamas. This is for my single mama. You are the wild heroes. This is for the incredible army of women that surround and uplift me. This is for every woman who ever felt like she was too much or not enough. I beg you not to wait for permission. Be all of who you are. Take up space. Make your own path. Make mistakes. Make messes. Make new things. Be free. Be loud. Be brave. Okay. Now we'll scoot back and see. Ham goes deep for neighbor's underwater stunt. Warning, this story contains spoilers from the season 2 finale of Your Friends and Neighbors, streaming now on Apple TV. The riveting finale of Your Friends and Neighbors takes viewers on a turbulent ride. The mysterious and gregarious Owen Ash, James Marsden, appears to have died in the penultimate episode when he slipped on marble tile in his home while chasing Andrew Cooper, John Hamm, with a gun. Ash, who had injected himself with ketamine, was enraged after finding out that Coop had informed his boss of his place on the Treasury Office of Foreign Assets Control, OFAC, list. But when Coop, Barney Choi, Hoon Lee, and a reluctant Nick Brandis, Mark Tallman, tried to dispose of Ash's body using his Escalade in the June 5th finale, Ash wakes up and begins sparring for his life. He tries to throw Barney from the car and strangles Coop with a seatbelt. There's a moment in the movie Tommy Boy, Hamm, 55, says in an interview with USA Today, where they put a deer in the back of the car and it goes crazy. That's what it reminds me of, which is very stupid and silly, but also funny. The 1995 Chris Farley and David Spade comedy, Your Friends and Neighbors scene, was a very difficult scene to film, Hamm said, because of tight quarters and the required action. There were all of these elbows and limbs flying everywhere. While the chaos ensues, Nick swerves to miss a deer in the road and ends up in a lake. Nick, Barney, and Coop surface, escaping from the submerged vehicle, but Ash perishes, for real this time. To further cover their tracks, the three decide to move Ash from the back of the car to the driver's seat to make it look as if he drove into the water. It was very fun to do, Hamm says of the scenes filmed in a massive tank in Connecticut, but very scary to do. Shooting underwater is a very, very tricky thing, Hamm explains. Not only because you have to have cameras that go underwater and electricity and water really don't mix, but also you have to have human beings that go underwater, and human beings underwater are not a great fit either. As a former member of his high school swim team, Hamm feels, quote, very comfortable in the water, he says. Doing stunts like that is always super fun, unquote. After Ash's disappearance, residents question whether he's alive or dead, as Nick grapples with their actions. The three of us crossed a line that night and we knew it, Coop says in the finale. Whether or not we'd get away with it remains to be seen. We shared a secret now, a big one. And I am reminded of an old Ben Franklin quote. Three can keep a secret if two of them are dead. And Hamm believes that scene will become a driving force for season 3. That's going to be, I would imagine, he says, how we keep these dark secrets secret. And should they be kept secret? Should they be secrets at all? Should Coop really be involved in any of this? And I think the answer is probably no. He needs to kind of grow up and get out of this world, but it's harder and harder to do. As Michael Corleone famously said in The Godfather Part 3, every time I try to get out, they pull me back in. You have been listening to a reading of USA Today for Tuesday, June 9th. We read the USA Today weekdays at noon. For more information, call us at 821-5555. Your reader for this hour has been Mikey. Thank you for listening.
Coming up next in the Niagara Frontier Radio Reading Service, we have episode number 12 of 1929 by Andrew Ross Sorkin. At 3 o'clock is the National Geographic, and at 4 o'clock is a re-airing of today's Buffalo News. Stay with us for these readings and more. following program is intended for listeners who are blind, have low vision, or have another print disability.